Today I'll be speaking to a cupping specialist. I'm so excited for you guys to meet him. Let me briefly introduce him before I bring him on. Dr. Tom Ingegno is the best-selling author of the cupping book, Unlocking the Secrets of Ancient Healing. Dr. Tom owns and operates Charm City Integrative Health, a multifaceted clinic. His clinic provides a multidimensional approach to reducing inflammation, improving circulation, and regulating the immune system to help people thrive. In addition to nearly a quarter century of clinical experience, Dr. Tom has taught at two universities of East Asian medicine and served as chair of the Maryland Board of Acupuncture. He was the director of acupuncture for a chain of wellness centers in the Mid-Atlantic. Dr. Tom has been featured in both consumer and professional media, spreading his message of health using modern research, traditional practices, and humor to make complex theories and treatments understandable. His professional passion is to help patients and like-minded practitioners develop no-nonsense practices to allow people to maximize their health. Hi, Tom. Thank you for joining us on the Mental Health Break podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you because cupping is something that I'm very interested in. It's something that's a part of our culture and my religion.
Mm-hmm.
And to find somebody else that is interested in that was really fascinating to me. So can you tell me a little bit about why you got interested in cupping, but also, since this is a mental health podcast,
Mm-hmm.
what is the connection between
Yeah.
mental health and cupping?
So first of all, I think you hit it right on the head right there. Cupping is a part of everybody's culture. Going back close to 5,000 years, we know the earliest texts that we have right now are from ancient Egypt, so 1515 BC, but it spread everywhere. East, west, north, south, and even to the Americas. And we're not exactly sure how it got there because it happened several thousand years ago as well. And as you mentioned, and I'm so glad you brought that up, cupping has become part of the Muslim faith. And there's actually days when cupping is performed every month as kind of a purification, but also as a real treatment. It's written about in the Quran. It's mentioned several times. And they knew back then that this had clinical effect, that this actually wasn't just some pseudoscience. So everyone's world culture has this in them, or as part of it. When I was teaching at a school in Manhattan, we had a lot of foreign students, and it didn't matter what country they were from. They literally said, "Grandma used to do that." So my goal was to take this remedy, this folk medicine, and put it back into the hands of people that are going to use it in their house, right? Because that was its original origins. Now, in about 300 AD, that's when Chinese medicine, specifically the physicians that were treating in China, said, "You know what? We think this is folk medicine, but we've really looked down on this incorrectly, and we should elevate it and use it clinically." So it kind of went in both directions. It went as folk medicine, and then it became clinical. And now, with the advent of modern tools, we don't even need fire. So we have silicone cups and plastic cups that all have pumps or something like that that can help them adhere to the body and increase circulation. Now, how do we tie that to mental health, which is an amazing question. In my book, I talk about how we use it for stress because I don't want to say we're treating anything at home. But really, when these cups go on, and they create this vacuum and they pull the skin away from the fascia away from the muscle, and then create this void. And what happens is the blood that's deeper in the tissue gets pulled to the surface and increases circulation. So our autonomic nervous system has two modes: fight or flight, rest and digest. When we're stuck in this fight or flight mode, which we pretty much all are constantly, we need to remind ourselves to go back into that. Now, cupping serves to increase circulation. And this is the cool thing about the autonomic nervous system. If you start one of those relaxation or those rest and digest functions, which increased circulation is, your brain goes, "I must be relaxed," and starts kicking in all those other things. And that's when we start to see normalization of neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine. So we start to feel better while those cups are on, and that carries over after treatment. So that's kind of a cool thing that I like about cupping as a modality.
Well, I just had cupping done a couple of months ago, and I can tell you I didn't enjoy it. It
Oh
hurt.
no! Oh no! Was it? May I ask? Was it wet cupping? Did they actually do bleeding or
No, it was the
no?
dry
Okay.
suction cupping, and
Okay.
but my back was really hurting at
Yeah.
that time. My shoulder was hurting, and she found a lot of inflammation in my body,
Yeah.
and inflammation is the cause of a lot of issues,
Hmm.
including depression and anxiety.
The root cause, and it's very funny. East Asian medicine. I'm an acupuncturist for over 23 years, and like I said, cupping kind of became part of acupuncture. Um, but all of those modalities we're trying to flip the switch to restore function, but that underlying cause of most of those diseases, regardless of how those symptoms manifest, you're 100% right, absolutely inflammation, right? And we see that even in the brain, and we know that inhibits proper hormone function, neurotransmitter production. It increases pain, and when we're in pain we don't feel our bests, right, mentally either. So being able to reduce that is a long-term benefit to all diseases.
And I like that finally we're getting some mainstream people showing up and showing that this folk medicine or traditional
Mhm, mhm.
medicine or herbal medicine or acupuncture, alternative medicine, that there's a place for all of that. I think somebody that made cupping more mainstream was that swimmer,
Yeah,
Michael Phelps, and they showed his back, and there was like all these big circles, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, what happened to him?" And
yeah.
can you explain what happens with all that
Yeah,
bruising?
yeah. So that's funny because like Michael Phelps is originally from Baltimore. I don't think he's still living here. But the day after he swam in 2016, and now we're with the Paris Olympics now. And I'm sure you're going to see cupping everywhere. Even the Simone Biles documentary, I believe, has a scene where she's getting cupping. But the next day, the local news was in my office filming a piece on cupping therapy because they wanted to know what those perfectly circular bruises were. When the cups are adhered, they're adhered with a vacuum. So in my office, we do traditional fire cupping, which we take fire to not heat the cup, but burn the oxygen out, create suction. So that cup goes on, and then the skin is pulled up into the cup, and then the fascia is spread out. And then we have some room behind that between the fascia and the muscle. And what happens is because this is a relatively closed system, we're pulling blood from the deeper tissue to the surface. So any inflammation like cytokines, lactic acid, any metabolic waste that might be sitting in that tissue gets pulled to the surface where it can be recirculated, picked up by the lymph. But as a side effect of that, those red circles are literally caused the same way you would cause a hickey. That negative pressure is breaking those microcapillaries at the surface.
That's so interesting. I know that you said you do acupuncture as well, and
Mhm.
acupuncture is one of my favorite methods of alternative healing of Chinese medicine. How are the two connected between acupuncture and
Mhm.
cupping? I know you keep talking about fascia, and fascia is just something that I don't think a lot of people know. Maybe it was just because I don't know
Yeah.
it, that it covers our entire body. It's not just the bottom of our feet that we keep hearing plantar fasciitis, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny because I think when I was coming up, we were just calling it connective tissue. We weren't even calling it fascia. It wasn't even the word we were using regularly, right? That's its name, but the idea is that acupuncture and cupping really relate in its attack of one, increasing the circulation, two, relaxing the autonomic nervous system. So, like I said, putting you in that fight or flight or out of that fight or flight mode into that rest and digest mode. And then three, reducing inflammation, right? So, both of them play with a concept that sounds kind of weird, but micro trauma, right? We just want to alter the tissue a little bit to kind of get the body jump started to doing the processes that it's supposed to do on its own, which in this case is going to be repair tissue or regulate hormones or regulate neurotransmitters or regulate immune system function. But it does that by allowing the body to step into that rest and digest mode.
So just the process of manipulating the fascia or
Yeah.
manipulating our meridians, we're creating the reducing the inflammation and
Yeah.
creating healing.
Yeah. So acupuncture, if we're talking specifically there, they'll affectionately call a needle an artificial splinter in Japan. right? So when we break the skin, your body's going to send signals to there. And with that, it's going to send red blood cells, white blood cells, nutrients, oxygen, antibodies. And in doing so, if the needle's down here and say, oh, the blood's got to come from the core of the body. So it starts traveling down there. And with it, it's going to have to vasodilate to get all that blood into that area. So in doing so, it allows those smaller capillaries to open up, allowing for more metabolic waste to get flushed out, and then allowing new fresh blood into there. So we see this kind of 1-2 punch there. And a similar thing is happening with cupping, but really with that, it's more of this vacuum. It's being forced, where we're relying more on the physical processes that the body naturally does with acupuncture.
That's so interesting. Like you mentioned before, that cupping is a part of the Muslim religion. You seem to know somewhat more than I do about the religion of cupping.
I've read a couple of books because this was so fascinating to me. And I think the Muslim faith does some really amazing things. Even Ramadan, to me, as a health practice, is so amazing. Everybody talks about intermittent fasting, and most religions have some form of that built into it. And we have, a full lunar cycle of it when we talk about Ramadan. So think about that. Yes, we're atoning and those kind of things, but really we're helping the body clean itself up. And I am so honored that one of my associates is actually of the Muslim faith and actually does practice hijama, which is the cupping as it's done in the faith. So we have a lot of Muslims that come in specifically to get that done, and he's happy to oblige. It's something that he's practicing his religion too. So it's really a beautiful thing.
There's so many people that I know that always are looking for hijama practitioners. And so the fact that you're doing that, and that's what really piqued my interest, because it is something I'm learning more about. But like you said, a lot of things like the Ramadan has built in the fasting once a year, but a lot of Muslims are trying to find ways to avoid that and cut corners because they see it as a hardship, not realizing the amount of benefits, all the benefits that comes with it. Because like you said, it's so mainstream now. A lot of non-Muslims are fasting voluntarily, but the Muslims are abandoning it and seeing all the issues that can come with that. The same thing with cupping. It might be painful, but a lot of people might not want anything to do with it.
And I'll speak to that pain component, right? This isn't a no pain, no gain. I will say, so I practice specifically a Japanese style of acupuncture, which tends to use smaller needles and relies more on point location. Like, we really want to find the most sensitive points. And that's supposed to be absolutely painless. Now, my cupping, I tend to do a very strong Chinese style cupping, but we still want the patient to be able to tolerate that. So I want to put it on the edge of discomfort there. And then after a few minutes, when that skin lets go and that fascia lets go, it really should be relatively comfortable. And a lot of patients, when I walk out of the room, I go, "Are you sure you're okay with this?" And I come back and then they're snoring. So I like to see that, but especially when there's pain in that area, it's almost like we're pulling more blood through that area and there's already a traffic jam there. So sometimes there is that discomfort. But the relief after should be pronounced, especially when it's that tight, that angry,
Well, I've also had acupuncture where initially when the needle goes in, initially it is painful. And then, like you said, it releases and then you're okay. And the same thing, my experience with cupping as well. It's that initial, like, I think we're so used to avoiding anything that's uncomfortable that even with food, we want nothing but sweets. We want to avoid the bitters. We want all the things that are good for us. We're trying to avoid and get away from, right?
Well, I mean, even fasting, you said it yourself. You see a lot of people turning away from it because it's uncomfortable, right? We're kind of like, we're kind of blessed at this time where we can be in a constant state of comfort. So any discomfort immediately disrupts our whole lives. But being able to lean into that and relax, and I'm not saying things should hurt all the time either, but understanding that not everything is supposed to be easy, not supposed to be soft all the time. And this isn't a tough guy thing I'm trying to make here. It's just, look, there are challenges in life, physical, emotional, mental, and that kind of gives us some fortitude, so not to suffer just to suffer, but with an outcome. right? So if there is a little bit of pain, right, we go and we get our blood taken. That's not always pleasant, but it tells us how healthy we are and what we need to do to get healthy. So not pleasant, but kind of part of the process of being human. So if we start to look at these practices like that, if there is some discomfort, as long as it isn't long lasting, as long as it isn't something that's going to do more damage than good, and we look at it through that lens as this is going to make me better, I think there's some value in that.
I see it the same way as us avoiding unpleasant emotions, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in the mental health field, I see a lot of people choosing to numb themselves instead of actually facing the difficult
Yeah.
emotions. Dealing with hunger during the day when you're fasting, that strengthens you. That makes you
Absolutely.
aware of your abilities and that you can overcome hardship. That's how I see it. I see it as training, but also with instead of numbing yourself, just facing your fears, facing your anxiety, facing your unpleasant emotions, facing your grief can actually help you get through to the other side of it. And will something like cupping help relieve some of that mental pressure or help you uh, with what mental health issues can
Yeah.
cupping help?
I would specifically say that. I would say more along the lines of that anxiety, depression, depending on how severe it is, right? If somebody's suicidal, I don't think cupping is the cornerstone of their therapy, right? I mean, they need a serious intervention, they need serious care. But as they're recovering, or as they're going through those daily stressors, which seem to feed the beast of anxiety and depression, I do think cupping could be weekly, every 2 weeks, once a month kind of tune up where somebody can reset their autonomic nervous system and just allow them to have that space to recover. Okay, for however long I'm in this room or I'm doing this, I've got 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour where I can just relax and recover. And giving yourselves that amount of space and that time to actually calm down and settle is really where I think people can see the mental health benefits of cupping.
So is this equivalent to activating the vagus nerve so that you're put in a
Absolutely,
parasympathetic nervous system?
absolutely. Yeah, I will use autonomic nervous system, vagal nerve, vagal tone, kind of interchangeably because they're so hardwired together. We know a lot of the ANS is triggered along that pathway of the wandering nerve. It touches every system. It will help regulate immune system function, digestion, heart rate, breathing. So yeah, if we look at all of those functions, when we're relaxed, all those functions get enhanced. All of those functions are allowed to proceed because we're not worried about running away from a tiger or we're running, and getting eaten or getting hurt. We're there and just relaxed and being, and that's when we digest better. That's when our neurotransmitters are produced better, and that's really what I think a lot of traditional therapies, if we look at it through that lens, we can start to see that benefit in that. And we're not always looking at that. In fact, acupuncture has, we call it alternative medicine, but it has more uh, systematic reviews in the Cochrane database than physical therapy and chiropractic put together. And that's not knocking those therapies. It's just saying that for a long time, traditional medicines were trying to be debunked. And then when they saw, no, this is actually happening, they did more investigation to how. Right. So you mentioned meridians and chi, and I don't really talk like that when I'm doing interviews because Westerners don't have that innate training. But those systems haven't been disproven. It's just been a way of organizing and using language to explain things that are happening in the body prior to having blood tests and MRIs and any functional scans that can see these things. And when we take it as that, and when we take the term chi as the body's ability to do things when they need to, as more of like a kinetic or potential energy as we would in physics, it tends to sound less mystic. And that doesn't take any away any of the value. That's just really how East Asia was using that. It wasn't meant to be this metaphysical thing. It's this thing that's innate to any living being, right? So if the body has the energy to do the things it needs to do when it needs to do it, we say the chi is ample, it's flowing smoothly. If it's not, we say, oh, it's stuck, it's deficient, um, or there's an infection, a pernicious influence. And then we do things to manipulate the body to either correct that flow, build that energy up, unblock it, or remove that pernicious influence. And that is how we do modern medicine. We just use different language. So to see that coming around and saying, well, we can't disprove chi, but everything they're saying classically, yes, we're regulating the immune system function. Yes, we're improving digestion. Yes, we're seeing mental health benefits with acupuncture and East Asian medicine. That's where I get really excited because we're just confirming the things using a different vernacular. And it's so great to see that the bulk majority of studies that came out to disprove acupuncture, they're like, oh, wait, hold on. Actually, there's something here. And I really feel like a lot of traditional medicine, if that's looked at with a wide enough lens, we will see true value there, right? When we talk about evidence-based medicine, we're talking about, yes, double-blind, placebo-controlled human research, right? We love that. That's Western medicine. But we also have two circles in that Venn diagram. One of them is the practitioner's experience. Do they have good experience treating the condition? What do they do? How are they getting results? And then number three, and probably most important, is what does that patient want? So if the patient is not willing to take drugs, or the patient is not willing to go get the surgery, but still wants an intervention, where does that leave them? In Western medicine, right? Not too many options. But when we talk about traditional practices, whether they're full on spiritual practices or they're more medical, um, yeah, even these like longer term therapies, because acupuncture is not a one and done, cupping is not necessarily a one and done. These can give long term results, especially when the patients want them and know they're able to do that.
I love that it's becoming more mainstream, and a lot of medical practitioners are using acupuncture at
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
We have in Arizona here, we used to have the Cancer Centers of America where they were,
Mhm.
what I loved about their model is it was very much integrated with healthy eating, making sure your diet is clean, making sure they were doing acupuncture, they were doing meditation, they were integrating all of that, herbal supplements. And so I don't know how the new hospital is handling it, but that's what I really loved about the old
Yeah.
model because it's no longer in place, I guess. I guess that it's another hospital that took over. But they are using that in a lot of different
Mhm.
fields of medicine, I think.
Yeah, I actually have a very good friend who I'm super proud of. He actually treats in a cancer center in New York, pediatric cancer specifically. And not only do they see better outcomes, clearly the patients are more comfortable and relaxed. The parents that are there with their kids are more comfortable and relaxed. And that's going to lead to better outcomes, right? So this is a patient focused practice, which I absolutely love.
In my work with people that have anxiety and other mental health issues, I'm finding it's an integrative thing. It's like in
Mhm.
Western medicine, we separate the mind and the body, but I love the Eastern medicine model of it's all connected. Our head and our body are
Yeah.
connected, right? And hormonal imbalance plays a big part. And one of the reasons I was introduced to acupuncture was because I was diagnosed with endometriosis.
Mhm.
And acupuncture was a lifesaver for me. It made such a huge difference for my mental health at that time, for just even being balancing out my hormones and feeling better. Can cupping also be used in a similar way for hormonal balance?
It can, and part of the reason I don't talk about it in the book as much is we don't have as much evidence, right? So there's definite evidence, there's definitive studies, systematic reviews in the last few years that talk about it being used for pain. There is some evidence for digestive disorders. There is some evidence for anxiety, and even respiratory disorders. But when we talk about that for hormone balancing, it's a little bit looser. We know that if we're getting better blood to the glands, we are probably going to help hormone balancing. But within that, I can't say it definitively, so I left it out of the book. It is worth a shot. It doesn't mean that you're going to be putting cups over where the bikini area covers, let's say. But in that case, you would do things across the hips and the low back if you were going to try.
Right. I mean, even my acupuncturist would put needles in my lower back, not
Hmm.
necessarily in any bikini area. So there are, I like the multimodal approach to any
Yeah.
kind of healing. I don't like the one and done, like you were mentioning, that you just take a pill and there's a pill for every ill. Sometimes we have to layer on our treatments, and it
Yeah.
goes the same for mental health as well as physical health. Um, what besides cupping, let's say somebody comes to you for anxiety
Mhm.
or any kind of mental health issue, and they want to give cupping a try. Besides the cupping process, what else would you recommend for them
So
to?
I would probably wanna wrap that into to an acupuncture treatment where we would do cupping as kinda like the final stage, the final 15 minutes, if you will. And part of that is because we know we have plenty of research with acupuncture and psychological diseases and disorders. Anxiety and depression may not be the number one thing seen in my clinic, but for most patients coming in, that's a component. And it's like on number three on the list as a primary reason for somebody coming into the clinic after pain and gynecology, pregnancy. So we do see quite a bit of it in the clinic. And I can speak to that because for years and years and years, acupuncture was associated with spiritual practices. Now, acupuncture is a medicine, it's not a spiritual practice. So you don't have to be Buddhist, or you can't not do it because you're not Buddhist or Taoist or anything like that. But when it was first being practiced, it was being practiced by monks and nuns of both Buddhist and Taoist nature in temples because those were the earliest hospitals. So, of course, there was an inherent spirituality to it, but that was where emotions kind of rested. So, when psychology started emerging in Chinese medicine, it looked a little different from, like, let's say, Western psychology or mental health. But in the same token, they understood that these things were similar, and the treatments that they did, we were using points that would say calm the spirit, or points that would release heat, if somebody was too angry or something like that. But we're really trying to diagnose somebody as a whole being. So what we tend to see in clinic is, wow, somebody just, suffered a great loss, right? Um, Say, oh, that's the grief and that's the lungs. And sure enough, there might be some respiratory disorders, some digestive disorders. Large intestine is also paired with that, or something on the skin. So, you said it before. We don't separate the mind from the body. It's all one thing. It's just, denser as we get into the physical tissue. And with that, that's really where I think East Asian medicine excels when we're looking at a whole person. Those little things that are not functioning, well, how are they affecting the whole system? And sometimes we'll catch symptoms that are overlooked in Western medicine, or hey, that's not part of this. And sure enough, somebody lays down on our table and we start asking them questions and they say 10 things and we go, those are all related. Oh, well, my doctor said they weren't. And it's like, no, not for them, but for us, yes. And that's why I think we get some better outcomes sometimes. And, like I said, it takes time. But within that, we can give people long lasting relief and hopefully be part of their wellness routine, right? Because we go to the doctor when we're sick. But this, our best function is to keep you up and running, right? Maintenance, and check in with us every once in a
Yeah, and like you said, if somebody's in a crisis, obviously we're not going to recommend these preventive treatments. But for prevention, as
while.
something that, if this is something that you have an issue with, whether it's digestive disorders, and then
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand how their digestive disorders are connected to their mental health as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. They
It's
miss
all
that.
connected. And actually, the majority of your serotonin and your dopamine, your feel good chemicals, your energy, motivation chemicals are all coming from your gut. And
Yeah.
so, when that's off, you're going to feel off. You're going to be more anxious. And so, a lot of people want that quick fix. And we're not saying that any of this is a quick fix. It has to be
No.
like that. It takes time to build all that up.
And you have to be willing to do that. You have to be. We try in our clinic to set reasonable expectations, right? We want to look at the overall health of the person, the severity of the condition, their everything from their family life to their social life to what they're eating, and have a conversation about that. What are they willing to change? What are they willing not to change? And try and give them an honest and open opinion of what we think a treatment plan looks like. Unfortunately, sometimes we're subject to the insurance companies. It's like you got 20 visits, you better fix it all now. And it's like, well, that's not how any human responds, right? Yeah. So we really try and give people like, look, this is going to take some time, or look, you stepped off the curb, you twisted your ankle a little. I think we can get you something significant in a few weeks. Uh, or, hey, this has been going on for 30 years and, you know, you're not in the best health right now. What can we do to bolster this outside of here? And hopefully we can move you quicker than we think. But being open and honest about these therapies, I think, is very important, because it is foreign to a lot of people. Once they have experience with it, I've been blessed here. I moved down to Baltimore probably, let's say, 2005, so it's almost been 20 years. And I have some patients that I've been seeing for longer than 15 years. Sometimes I only see them once a quarter. Sometimes I still see them monthly. But those are the ones that get it. Those are the ones that know, like, if I keep coming in with some regularity, or I step in a little bit more frequently at the first sign of something going wrong, they sidestep those bigger issues, right? And that's really, I think, my mission is to get more people in tune with their bodies and their mind, so they know that they're paying attention to what's going on, and they know that, like, hey, I got this little tap on the shoulder. It's time to go get this taken care of, rather than, for lack of a better expression, driving with the emergency light on. You know,
Or the check engine light.
check engine light. Yeah.
I like acupuncture, at least for my maintenance. So
Yeah.
every once in a while, I will pop in for just to get maintenance on my body with the acupuncture. But now I'm very interested in using cupping
Yeah.
regularly as well. Are there people that you would not recommend cupping for?
So, and I've seen some celebrities doing this while they're pregnant. I don't recommend pregnant women get cupping. And it's not that we know or don't know that it's unsafe. It's just not really ethical to experiment.
Right.
So, I would say, because we're increasing circulation, especially in the abdomen, I wouldn't go anywhere near that. Now, skin conditions, open wounds, don't don't cup over that. People that have deep vein thrombosis, right? You could probably cup somewhere else on their body, but if you see raised wide veins or veins under the surface of the skin, that's not an area we want to cup. You also have to look at the overall kind of constitution of the person, right? That'll tell us how strong we can go. So maybe one cup very softly on is enough for some people, and other people you can cup up and down their back all day, and they're not gonna flinch. But we want to make it as comfortable as possible while still getting therapy, and you have to judge all that stuff. Fortunately, like I said, this was a grandma medicine. Grandma didn't have medical degrees unless your grandmother was a doctor. But within that, you can kind of go how you feel. And even the book, I wrote it not as a medical text. I wanted it to be as straight to the point. And what would your grandmother have told you if she taught you how to do cupping?
If grandma was doing it at home, you're not recommending people do this at home, because I know that
Absolutely.
you're telling people to do it
Absolutely,
at home.
but now there's some caveats. So the home cupping, I would say, do not use fire. We have cups that are silicone. We have cups that are made out of plastic. Um, you know, Last thing I want is somebody to catch their house on fire or burn themselves or somebody else. Traditionally, in my clinic, we use glass cups for fire cupping. We've removed that as well. So silicone cups literally squish over the point, and it's by feel. Hey, this bothers me here, and we give you some photos in the book for some ideas where to treat. Um, it is something, like I said, has been done in households all over the world for over 5,000 years. And I think it's easy enough. And trust me, the silicone cups are much more comfortable than anything you would get clinically. So you can go slow and low there, and we give you some guidelines for that as well, so no one gets hurt.
I know last time I went, like I said, when I went cupping, I had to go twice. I had to go to somebody that was an acupuncturist, and he only
Mhm.
did the cupping because he didn't have time for the acupuncture.
Yeah,
And I didn't find relief from him at all. And then I went to this other lady that did the cupping. But he told me you can go to Amazon and get the cupping kit and do it at
absolutely.
home.
Absolutely. If you have an Asian grocery store near you, I guarantee you, in their home goods section, they probably have a cupping set, or if they have a little like herbal pharmacy, they'll probably have a cupping set in there. But the kits are so abundant that, like, I ordered a bunch to sell in my clinic. Somebody said, "Well, can I order those?" And it's like, I don't even want to bother shipping them to you. It's cheaper for you to go through Amazon. So what I would recommend is, in my book, I cover the different types of cups that you can get for home cupping. Uh, take a look online, see what looks good, see the pros and cons of all of them, which we go through. Um, I really like super cheap. I have a little pink one over here. It's nothing fancy, but this is just a little silicone cup. So when you're done with it, wipe it out with Clorox or something. But literally, it just sticks to the skin by pressing it down. And this is it, right? It's not super strong, but once again, I want to keep it safe for people doing it home. I don't want it to be overly strong. And if you need to, you can do it, you know, a few days later if the bruising isn't too bad and you're all cleaned up. So you can you can take it into your own hands, knowing that if it's too severe, if you're in a lot of pain or there's a lot of inflammation in that area, you might want to seek a licensed practitioner. But in most cases, a little bit at home will go a long way.
So, in what situations would you recommend somebody do home cupping?
So mild aches and pains, workout stuff, mild digestive issues. So we're if you think you need medical help, you need medical help. If you think it's too severe, or you try the cupping first and it doesn't do anything for you, then seek medical attention. So I would go the other way, where I'd say, no, this is when you should go see a professional. So mild to moderate issues is probably where you're going to see the most benefit with home cupping.
So, as far as muscle or
Yeah.
tissue issues, people are using those massage guns now.
Yeah, that's great too.
Is
That's
this
great too.
similar?
It's similar. I had a patient one time describe this as a reverse massage, which I think was kind of savvy, right? So we think of, like, either these percussion guns or massage tools of any kind are really pressing and squeezing out inflammation from, those that fascia and the deeper muscles. This is pulling those apart. So one is positive pressure, one's negative pressure. And some people respond better to one over the other. But like you said, these are widely available on Amazon, eBay for $20 or less. You can get a whole little kit, and you can give it a try without really too much training and too much concern that you're going to hurt yourself if you use like a home cupping set. If you're going to play with
Any
fire cupping, I don't
warning?
want to
Yeah, well,
I don't
any
want to take
warning
responsibility.
as far as like anything people should be wary of as to what not to do so that they're not hurting themselves?
Yeah, not too strong is what I would say. So the thing I like about the silicone ones is they only have so much space. It's a very small volume. So you're not going to get a really strong suction. With the pump gun, right? So they have a little plastic cup with a one-way valve. Those are great, but you need to know that there's a limit to how many times you're supposed to pump that. People will sit there and they'll keep pumping until they can't pump anymore. That's too much. Normally 3 to 5 pumps. Each kit has a recommendation of how strong you should be pumping it. Don't go over that, right? More, and this is an issue that we have in the West as well. More is more. It's not necessarily better, right? We don't take a bottle of aspirin if we have a headache. That's going to kill us. So putting the cup on as strong as you possibly can, because you can put it on that strong, is never good advice. It should be mild to moderate at
But what
most.
would happen if they did that?
Okay, most likely, and in those cases, you have clear plastic. You would see the skin become purple very quickly, and that's maximum dosage. So if somebody was to do that, you don't want that on there for more than a minute. If somebody was to do that and leave it on, the likelihood that they would get blisters, like either clear fluid filled blisters or blood blisters, where you've actually pulled blood through some of the layers of the dermal tissue, can happen, right? So we want to avoid blisters, definitely. And even then, I put a section in the book, in the unlikely event that that was to happen, how to clean and dress those. And clearly, you're not cupping over that until that tissue is all healed. But that means you overdid it. I don't believe this would be a case where you're going to the emergency room, but let's not let anybody get to that level. You would have to severely either leave the cups on way too long or put them on way too strong to do that. Ah,
I don't know
scared you.
why this is all like so scary to me that it needs to be in the hands of somebody that knows what they're doing. And I guess, I don't know.
No, that's all right. I mean, this is one of those things that if people were to try it and see how mild the suction was with some of these devices, I think they go, "Oh, this doesn't feel like anything like when I go to the clinic to get it done." Right?
Okay.
And then you'd see that difference. It's like, um, you might give a friend or a partner a massage, right? Like, oh, I want to, but even if the person knows what they're doing, they're not going to have the technique and the strength that a massage therapist might, right? So that's what you're paying for. And I think there's that same gradation of therapy. Okay, cupping at home is going to be milder than cupping from a therapist. And I think that's really where you'll see the difference, and you'll be on the safe side if you do it mild to moderate.
Is this similar, like you said, the pressure, the massage guns are pushing,
Yeah.
and so will the deep tissue massage,
Yeah.
right? That would be pushing all that out.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So this
absolutely. And
cupping
and
is
I think,
pulling.
with these percussion guns, there's like a straight down motion where I think with massage, they can kind of work along the muscles. So you might be able to direct a little bit more the flow of that. And you certainly have an effect on the lymph with both of those as well, right? Percussion guns also seem to have like a little vibratory therapy.
Yeah. So as far as like, let's say I hurt my neck again, because I'm
Yeah.
at that age where I can wake up and I have a
I
pain.
I
Right?
understand that. I feel that. I empathize.
So if I have that again, what route would you recommend as the best route for me?
So if it is mild, right? If you're not like if you're able to turn your head, but it's a little sore, if this is something where you might think to reach for like an NSAID, an Advil, or something, I would try cupping. And yeah, the cool thing with the silicone cups is they have ones that are even small enough to actually get up at like the base of the skull. So long as you don't get too much hair underneath there, the suction will still hold. So you could walk the whole length of the trap, and then you probably need somebody else to help you, but down along the shoulder blade and even down to the shoulder, depending on where you're feeling that tightness. And this is the other thing, right? Maybe you only put two or three on and you go, oh, I got some of it, but I feel like there's something else still tight. Well, okay, throw them on another place. We have tons of these and ones without this little handle on the top at the office. And I don't think there's been a day where at least somebody at the office hasn't had one under their shirt. Like, I'm going to stick this on and then go about doing whatever they're going to do, and then 15 minutes later, make sure the cup's off and it's all clean and ready
Is this good for knots, like deep knots
to go.
that
Yeah. And like I said, if it's a real deep knot, you'll probably just take the edge off. But for that little kind of like, oh, I'm a little sore, I'm a little stiff. One thing I love about the ones without the handles is like you get about 12 and they stack like nesting dolls. And for something that's about the size of a tennis ball, you could throw that in your gym bag. So either part of your warm up or part of your recovery afterwards, if you were going to be like foam rolling, you could do this alongside of that, right? You're not going to foam roll over the cup, but put the cup on, give it a few minutes, and then foam roll after. So really to be a flexible therapy where a lot of people can play with this and do it what they need to, so they can resume their normal activities, as they say.
wow, it's also interesting to me. It's a whole nother world. Even though, like I said, this is a part of my culture and religion, I don't know too much about it myself, and I've just been playing around with it the last couple of years. But I know it's a lot of people, like you said, in certain parts of the Muslim communities,
Yeah,
they really believe in it. And like you said, they could do it like once a month, even,
yeah.
if not more. But tell me about your book, just so that we can have an idea. What is your book really about? And then
So
where
yeah, my
people can
book
buy
is basically taking you through everything you need to know about home cupping. And that's talking about the different styles of cups that are available, the different techniques, where to put them, how to clean them, the safety precautions and contraindications, which I think, yeah, as you rightly expressed concern, we want to make sure it's being done safe and comfortably and actually having a therapeutic effect and not overdoing it. So we cover a lot of that. We cover some of the history. Going back to ancient Egypt, it's not a long chapter. I know history can be so boring, but it talks a little bit about how cupping kind of spread from that area, Egypt, Greece, Persia, outward, and then kind of had its impact all over the world. So we know that we even have connections to modern America. In the 60s, I believe there was about 3 movies that featured cupping. One of those was Zorba the Greek. Actually, I guess the 70s would be when Godfather Part 2 came out. But there's a scene where the grandmother's doing cupping on Fredo's chest because he was sickly as a baby. And then there was a Roman Polanski movie that had it, and Roman Polanski has clearly some issues, but the movie does have a cupping scene in it, which I believe is a comedy. But before my time, and not such a fan of him. So, we have this history with this that kind of belongs to everyone. And I think that's one of the things that I like to share about it. It's not appropriation. It's not going into somebody else's culture and say, give me this. It's something that we all share that was all over Europe, all over Asia, all over Africa. And then, like I said, there's connections to it here in the West with indigenous people, especially in South America. And, it should cover every aspect of what we call static cupping, where we don't move it, and sliding cupping, where we actually slide the cup with some oil underneath it along the tissue.
Where can you get the book from?
So the book is available at every online retailer. Amazon is the 9,000-pound gorilla. Barnes and Noble, and then a bunch of other small distributors. If you go to my website, charmcityintegrative.com, which is my clinic website, it has links to the book. But also the cuppingbook.com. We try to keep it as simple as possible. The cuppingbook.com will have links to all those small retailers.
I don't see this as being cultural appropriation, because it's like, I'm so grateful for the people that have mainstreamed Qigong.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite Qigong practitioners are white men. I mean, the one was a white man and one white woman, and they have simplified it enough that a lot of the regular people like me could actually be introduced to it.
Yeah.
And if I want to go deeper, maybe I can find a more experienced practitioner. You're making cupping mainstream. Michael Phelps made it. I mean, all the athletes that are using it.
Yeah, I mean, even Gwyneth Paltrow in '06 showed up to a red carpet event with cupping marks all over her back.
Yeah.
So, and I maybe I'm saying appropriation just because I'm very sensitive as an acupuncturist, as a relatively large white male in the field of East Asian medicine. I have a commitment to it. It's given me a career. I'm not trying to steal the culture. I want to represent it the best I can and be honest and open about it, and say, look, I don't understand this. I don't do that, but this is how this medicine was presented to me. And I have to, there's an expression in China: when drinking water, remember the source. So I have to thank all those people that came before me and really hold it in high esteem, knowing that I want to do what's best for my people, like my patients on the table, but honoring those people that came before me and actually brought it to modern times.
I'm grateful for Chinese medicine, and I credit the Chinese for all that they've discovered. I'm grateful for all the Muslim physicians that have created a lot of the medicine and modern technology that we're using now. Even essential oils, it started off with a lot of Muslims starting to use it, and it was a part of our culture before it became mainstream. And now the biggest companies, Young Living and doTERRA, are Mormon, but yet I'm very grateful for them because they've made it mainstream,
accessible.
They've made it accessible. And so for that reason, yes, give credit where it's due, but at the same time, I am grateful that a lot of people introduced it to the West, and now it's open and accessible to the rest of us. And so I appreciate you writing this book and you doing the work that you do. The more we share as a community, global community, the better we're all off for it.
Absolutely. And I think that convergence of ideas really kind of carries us all a little bit further, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, last question. If you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give young Tom of the things that you know now, especially
I
about cupping?
I would say take it easier. I've always been high strung. Let's say that. But I was so grades oriented when I was in high school, and I wasn't number one in the class, but I was in that top 10 and I had to do and I had to try harder and I had to work harder. And knowing what I know now, there's no way I couldn't have ended up in this field. I couldn't have done anything different. I think there was God, I don't even want to say fate, but there was definitely a flow that as long as I followed it, things were easier. And sometimes I was fighting against that. So I would say, just take it easy, be gentle with yourself, and find that flow.
Yeah, one of the best things I've ever done, and I tell this to my patients all the time, is just allowing my life to unfold.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, we can fight against all the obstacles as much as we can, or sometimes we just have to let go and just allow things to unfold, and it takes us to where we're meant to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I really appreciate this conversation. You've sparked the curiosity for me, so I'm interested in digging
Oh, you'll
deeper.
give it a try. You'll give it a try, and you'll go, "Oh, it wasn't that bad."
Well, I've been giving it a try. And that's another thing I want to say is a lot of people, like, especially in my family, I beg them, please try all these alternative things like
Mhm.
acupuncture or herbs or supplements or even cupping. And they go one time and they're like, oh, it didn't work for me.
Didn't work, yeah. And
And
that's normally what we hear when somebody goes, "Oh, I tried that once."
yeah,
And you go, "Well, how long was the condition?" "Oh, I've been having that, back pain for 20 years." "Oh, and you expected just to flip a switch and it goes off." Right? Well, the alternative is heavy duty painkillers or surgery. So, play it however you want, but don't blame the therapy if you didn't give it oh, they just wanted me to come back. Yeah, because that's how it works. It wasn't. Believe me, they're not. No one's getting rich off of one patient.
yeah.
Yeah, we genuinely want those people to get better, and we just have to allow that time and space for that to happen.
And that's true for anything. One therapy session with me about your anxiety isn't going to fix you, and one therapy session with acupuncture isn't going to fix you. But a lot of people they're expecting the quick
Yeah.
results, the quick fixes, and not realizing that it does take commitment. And I'm reading this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza called "You Are the Placebo,"
Uh huh.
and I really hate the fact that placebo has such a negative rep. That people are like, "Oh, that's just placebo." But imagine how powerful your brain has to be to take a sugar pill and make you better.
Better.
And
Yeah.
so for you to just dismiss that as that's just placebo instead of taking advantage of that, I think it's just you're missing out.
You know what? And I believe that East Asian medicine takes that into consideration. I was at a lecture once where the guy said, look, we have this thing called fire massage. Almost no one does it anymore. Why? Because you're not actually putting fire on the patient. No, there is a technique, but we're not going to talk about that a lot. But what you would do is you'd mix whatever herbal liniment in with an alcohol. You put it in a big tray, you light it on fire, and you scoop your hand through it, just so the palm of your hand is now has this blue flame on it, right? And the patient sees this. And as you're putting your hand down on the patient, you crush the fire out. You snuff it out with your hand. You make a fist. But the patient sees that and goes, I'm getting something special. They're putting heat into my body, right? And that's more valuable to the patient, right? And we're actually trying to play up that placebo because anything I can do to make you think that you're getting better. And we have studies where positive mindset affects pain, it affects hormone levels, it affects everything. So why not play that up? Now, I don't want to be a charlatan, I don't want to be a snake oil salesman, but if I can have in my treatment room calm music, nice soft lighting, the bed is comfortable. Well, you're more likely to feel better already. Why? Oh, I just got to lay down. And often I'll hear that from patients. Oh my God, I'm so comfortable right now. We haven't even started. We've already gotten over one of those hurdles. So I say play that up. As
Yeah.
long as you're doing something real for that patient, yeah, why not play up the placebo?
Well, there's actually more, it's more than that. Like, people literally have had sham surgery where they were just cut
Mhm,
open and sewed back up and they didn't get anything, and yet they did better than the people that actually got the surgery. There's so much
mhm.
research about this, and it just amazes me that we can literally heal our body with our minds and with
Absolutely.
our thoughts, and we need to be more careful about the thoughts that we entertain. And like you said, that like I recommend guided meditations a couple of minutes a day if you're really stressed, just to calm your system down and reset. And you said that cupping is the same thing. Like you just give your body a chance for that hour or whatever just to reset. And if we can do that throughout our day, throughout our week, whether it's through meditation, through massage, through cupping, through acupuncture, just laying on the table. I I had this one acupuncturist in California that I adored. She was amazing. For 3 hours, I would be with her,
Wow.
mostly talking, and she
Yeah.
would do massage, she would do acupuncture, and I loved her so much just from that connection that we had.
Mhm.
And so, obviously, the acupuncture and the massage, all of that was effective too. But just getting to be with her once a month or whatever and just talking and getting a lot of stuff off my chest, and all of that was very therapeutic and beneficial. And if we can give ourselves that time instead of just being on that hamster wheel, going, I think it'll make a huge difference in our overall
Absolutely.
mental health and physical health as well, since it's all connected.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think creating that space is really something, when it's not a drug or a surgery, that's one of the most powerful healing modalities right there, and that's just having that space.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I so appreciate you joining me today and talking about this. This was so interesting to me. Can you let us know how people can find you and maybe
Yeah,
work with
yeah.
you?
So my big website is Charm City Integrative. Charm City is the moniker for Baltimore. Integrative, because we take a bunch of different services, both modern and ancient, and combine them in ways that hopefully help patients get better faster.
Are you on social media at all?
Absolutely. CC Integrative on Instagram and Twitter. I think we're Charm City Integrative on Facebook. Our YouTube channel, I believe, is Charm City Integrative as well. But if you Google us, you'll find us everywhere.
Well, I'm going to add all of that to your show notes, but
Sure.
thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. Great conversation.